Welcome to the Energy Commission Electrical Wiring Program. This is to take you through how to fill Form B. Now, as stated in the previous video on how to fill Form A, an authentic electrical wiring certificate comes with certain inscription. Number 1 is the logo, and number 2 is the seal, and number 3 is the serial number. Now, you are required to replicate the digital address as stated on the Form A. And as mentioned in Form A, everybody responsible to design, construction, and inspection is supposed to fill Form B accordingly. On Form B, particulars of the signatories to the electrical wiring certificates include Designer 1, Designer 2, the constructor, and the inspector. Now, on Form B, the designer is expected to write his name, write the company he represents, the location of his company, his postal address, and then write his contact number. Now, it is possible for a very complex electrical installation, there may be more than one designer. The other designer is also required to also fill his portion accordingly. Now, the constructor, who is the CEWP, is expected to write his name in full. If he has his own company or he represents a company, he's expected to write that accordingly. He's expected to write the location where his company is located. He's also required to write the postal address of his company and then his contact number. And the contact number here is his personal contact number. The inspector is also required to do the same. He writes his name, he writes his company name, if any, he writes the company location, he writes his postal address, and then his personal contact number accordingly. Next is supply characteristics and earthing arrangement. And under earthing arrangement, you find that there are different types of earthing system. We have the TNC, the TNS, the TNCS, and then the TT. What is common in our jurisdiction is mostly the TT system. There are facilities that comes with TNCS or TNS system in Ghana. So you are to make sure that you understand the type of earthing system and then take accordingly. Number and type of live conductors. Now, the installation you have worked on could be an AC system or a DC system. If it is an AC system or a DC system, you are to take the number of live conductors. It can be single phase 2 wire, single phase 2 phase 3 wire, 3 phase 3 wire, or 3 phase 4 wire. What is common in our jurisdiction here? For single phase, it is single phase 2 wire, and then for a 3 phase, it is 3 phase 4 wire. If it is a DC system, you are expected to take and indicate whether it's a 2-pole, it's a 3-pole, or it's a 4-pole. Under the nature of supply parameters, you are required to indicate the nominal voltage. The nominal voltage in Ghana today for a single phase is 230 volts, and then for a 3 phase is 400 volts. You are also required to indicate the supply frequency. Our frequency in Ghana is 50 Hz, so you write that accordingly. Now, prospective fault current is obtained by inquiry or by measurement. For service application, most of the time, because there will not be power at the facility, you can write not applicable. But for additions or alterations, you are required to actually conduct the prospective fault current test and record the values accordingly. External loop impedance can also be obtained by measurement or by inquiry. Now, it is the details of the service cutout or the MCB that you are expected to write here. It can be, the type can be either a fuse or an MCB, and then you are to write the rating of the device. It can be an 80 amps, 63 amps, 100 amps, or whatever, depending on the size of the system. Now, the supply protective device characteristics. You are required to state the type and then the nominal current rating of the device. The type is normally stated on the device. So let's say, for instance, if it is an MCB, the type will be written. So you find a number, a specification written on it, 60497-1. It can be -2, it can be -3. So that is the type of or the characteristics of the device. And then you also find the rating of the device written on it. So it can be 100 amps, it can be 63 amps, it can be whatever. So the ampage that is on it is what you are expected to write. You are not to cook anything from your head. So if it's an ACCB, for instance, it comes with different characteristics, and then the rating, you write it accordingly. Now let's look at particulars of installation referred to in the certificate. Under means of earthing, you are required to indicate the type of earthing system, or the means of earthing will depend on the type of earthing you have ticked at the top. So if it is a TNCS, for instance, you expect that it will be supplier's facility. But if it is a TT system, for instance, it will be an installation earth electrode. So whatever the type of the means of earthing is, you take accordingly. Now maximum demand for the load or for the whole installation is supposed to be recorded here. It is actually something that you need to calculate. But then we are saying that for the avoidance of doubt, where you don't have the ability to be able to do the maximum demand calculation, the size of your supply protective device, you can record that as your maximum demand. Details of installation earth electrode. Under this, you are required to state the type of electrode you use, whether you use a rod, you use a mat, you use a tape, you use whatever. You are required to write what you used here. You are also required to state the location of the earth electrode, where the earth electrode is buried within the premises, maybe behind the building, on the left side of the building, maybe adjacent or close to the garage, or in front of the porch. You are required to write that accordingly. Now, earth electrode resistance. You are expected to conduct an earth electrode resistance test using your earth electrode resistance tester and write the value accordingly. Under main protective conductors, you are required to state the size, the earthen conductor, the material of the conductor, and the size of the earthen conductor. So for instance, the material is always copper, but the size differs. The minimum size of earthen conductor that we allowed for premises is 16 millimeters square, right? So you indicate copper, you indicate the size, and then you verify the connection. You cannot verify a connection if you cannot see both ends of the conductor. So now what it means is that inside the distribution board, you must have seen the cable actually connecting the main earth terminal, and then you must have seen an inspection chamber created. Where inspection chamber is not created, you cannot indicate as having verified the connection. Now, main equipotential bonding. Mostly for normal domestic buildings, main equipotential bonding hardly applies. But for industrial setups where you have other utilities like gas pipeline, you have some steel structures and all that, you are always required to bond them. And so the size, the conductor, the type of conductor used to do the bonding and the size, you are required to indicate the type here and then the size here, and then you verify the connection. And by verification of connection, basically what it means is that you can actually see that the thing is connected from both ends. You can also verify with basic continuity. Main switch or circuit breaker. Now, consumer units is made up of a main switch and then a distribution board. Now, the main switch inside the consumer unit or the incomer inside the consumer unit is what we are talking about here. You are required to indicate the details of the main switch. Now you are expected to write the GS type, and the GS type means Ghana standards, and the type and the number of posts. Mostly you find that on the device. You find sometimes it's written 60497-1, 60898-1, or 60898-2. So what is written on the device is what we expect you to record. You are not to pick anything from anywhere. Now the current rating is also always written on it. What is common these days is 125 for even single or three-phase loads. But then there are systems where you find that the incomer is actually 32 amps, 63 amps, 50 amps, whatever. What is written on the incomer is what is expected to be written here. Now the voltage rating. You find that the incomer also has some voltage rating written on it. We are not talking about the nominal voltage here. The incomer has its specific voltage that it has been rated to work with. So you have to copy that as stated on the incomer. Now the location. I mentioned that a consumer unit is made up of a distribution board and an incomer. Now wherever the consumer unit is located within the facility is what you are expected to state here. So let's say, for instance, the consumer unit is stated in the corridor. You are supposed to write corridor. If the facility has a special power room for such equipment, you are expected to write maybe power room. You can have a number of floors with different power rooms, so maybe power room 1 or ground floor power room, and you write that accordingly. Consumer unit or distribution board comes with an incomer, that is MCCB. Most MCCB comes with a setting. So for instance, your MCCB is rated 200 amps, but then when you did your maximum demand calculation, you arrived at maybe about 125 amps. Now you are required to adjust the setting of your MCCB to the right setting. Whatever setting at which you set it, you are required to write here. So let's say it is 200 amps. You wrote the 200 amps at the top, but then the setting, you are required to write it here. So maybe 125 amps. Now, if your incomer happens to be the type that has a residual current device, which is an RCD, you are required to write the rating of the RCD, which is mostly in milliamperes, and then you're also required to write the trip time. And the trip time here is the time it takes for the RCD to trip. And that is mostly a live test. So for service application, you find that there wouldn't be power for you to be able to do, there will not be power for you to be able to do that. So we request that you don't leave the place blank, but you can write NA. Next is comment on existing installation. Now, having gone through all the inspection and testing procedures, if you find that there is a need for you to make a comment, you write whatever comment there is. Sometimes you find that during inspection, you find the installation violates some aspects of the regulation. It is important that you state that here. Or, in order not to leave the place blank, when you are satisfied, the inspector is satisfied with all the inspection and test process, there is nothing wrong, maybe writing here, satisfactory. Under schedules, you are required to indicate the number of inspection schedules and then the test results schedule. Now, our test results schedule is titled Basic Test Form. So you are required to indicate the number of basic test form you have used for the installation. For systems where an inspector is able to use an inspection schedule, we request that he indicates that accordingly. Where it doesn't apply, we encourage that you don't leave the place empty, the right not applicable. In summary, a fully filled electrical wiring certificate must have the digital address written. All persons responsible under the signatories must fill it accordingly and then put their stamps on it. This brings us to the end of how to fill Form B. In our next lecture, we shall take you through how to fill the basic test form. Until then, bye-bye.